And as you may have guessed by our chatter so far, we are reviewing the Incubus album S.C.I.E.N.C.E. And it's important to note there's a period in between each of those letters. So I don't know if we're supposed to pronounce it S.C.I.E.N.C.E. But that is the album that we are reviewing today. It is Incubus's second album and their first on a major label. We'll get more into the album history soon. But that's what we listen to. And we do have to say, Brandon Boyd, he had a lot of thoughts at this time.
He did. Very lucky that I just want to thank the listeners first for my victory in the poll. Seven Dust was handily defeated, which was going to make me miserable for 2 days. And then P.O.D made me miserable. So this, when I started it, automatically expecting to be miserable, was not miserable at all.
Yeah, it's not miserable. This is a good, I think this album really surprised me in that, like, I've been an Incubus fan for a long time. I've listened to this album a ton of times. I really like it, but I think it's been a while since I've listened to it cover to cover. And I was like kind of surprised at like how much it slaps. Like it's like a really good album from top to bottom. It's crazy how good it is.
Yeah, I think this is one of those ones that's like, this is like a White Pony level thing, as in like,
oh,
yeah, like I can listen. I mean, we haven't reviewed White Pony, but this is one that like I listened to and didn't. I don't know. The lyrics suck, but like
the lyrics are really bad. I'm sure we'll get into that, but yeah, it's like, oh my God, I read like Becca, and is obviously, I mean, Incubus is one of those bands, like everybody knows who they are. They had enough big singles and enough big presence in the early 2000s that I don't think there's anyone who wouldn't know who Incubus are. But like, I do think there are lots of people who don't know anything about this album. And I was like reading Becca, my girlfriend Becca, some of the lyrics today, and she was just like, what? Like, what are you even talking about? Like,
it's uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable. And I think he kind of gets away with it because a lot of the worst lyrics on the album, he's talking quite fast. So I think he's kind of doing that sort of rap sing thing. So I think maybe you don't really realize like just how bad the lyrics are because he's just kind of walking his way through them. But yeah, when you like actually sit down with the lyric sheet, you're like, holy shit.
Well, the thing about me is that I don't ever forget lyrics to a song once I've heard it, and like, I listened to this album 2 million jillion times back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I know every word. I'm a completely different human than I was at that time. So I'm like singing along with it. And I'm like, oof, buddy, yeesh. There's a few times where I'm just like the funny thing about it is like I used to write like what I guess were new metal songs, like for myself.
Right.
Well, thinking I was going to be in a big fucking band. I probably had fucking 500 songs written and never once sang. Well, I sang twice. I've said that. I was in a band. I did 2 shows.
Wrote the songs. You're talking lyrics, like no instrumentation. Just like that. If you had a song, these could be the lyrics of the song.
Yeah. And I think I could put my lyrics next to these lyrics and be the same amount of deep, to tell you the truth. People will be like, damn,
as a puddle, really. There's not a lot of substance. Like the thing that I don't really love about the lyrics is that like, obviously there were a lot of bands that sung lyrics that didn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, Deftones, that's a band that has lyrics in a lot of their songs that maybe don't make a ton of sense in the new metal genre. And then there's a lot, like we've talked about Bush on the show before. I mean, that was a band where, clearly it was just kind of sentences strung together that kind of sounded cool. But I think in a lot of cases, those types of bands, when I think about them, like at least there was a mood, there was like kind of something that they were going for. And there was a sort of like poetic quality to a lot of those. You can make the same case about Radiohead too. Like the lyrics maybe aren't, they're abstract, but they're not, there's a mood to them. Whereas like with these Incubus lyrics, it's like he's trying to like make a statement. Like it's very like smart, dumb guy statements that he's like trying to make in this in the songs, where it's very much like, this is what I think Earth might be about.
Well, I think like the thing that hurts them the most is that like they do make sense. Like I can make sense of what he's talking about, right? And that's different from like the songs that don't make sense. It's like, well, I can take this song and I can make it whatever I want it to be. This song, this Deftones song is about, basically at the time it was like girls. This is about how like girls are mean. You know what I mean? Right. Like, that's what I thought everything was about.
I mean, that's what most songs were about. You'd be listening to them in the car and being like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this girl. Like, it's pretty tough. Yeah.
But this girl that isn't attracted to me at all, she's very mean for not being attracted to
yeah, exactly. I've just happened to notice that she's perfect in every way, and her only flaw is that she does not like me.
This girl is avoiding me because, or this girl, she won't like reciprocate my love of her, even though I've never told her anything, and I kind of hide when she walks in the room.
I've spoken to her twice. How does she not know I love her? This is crazy.
I used to have this move back when I was in like 9th grade, 8th grade, where like I'd get like a real crush on a girl and I would just kind of always be there. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh man. This is a very funny story. I had kind of one of those moments in my life. So there was this girl in high school, and I took a class a grade above me, and just history. It wasn't like a crazy class or anything, but I took a class like a year above me, and there was this girl in the class, and I had a massive crush on her. Like I just thought she was so hot and like so out of my league. Like I was such a nerdy, like awkward kid, and I couldn't talk to anybody, whatever. So I just, same kind of thing as you, I pined from afar, and I was so brutal at exactly that. Like I would know like what classes she was in, and I would just be like drinking water at the water fountain, and she'd like come out of her class, and I would just be like, oh, hey Jen, like whatever, and then we'd like walk down the hall together, and I would be like literally like shaking. Like I liked her so much, and I'd be like trying to have these conversations, and like we never talked about anything. Like I had no reason to be this nervous. And then 10 years later, flash ahead to like 10 years later, I'm doing stand up, and comes to one of my shows with a like mutual friend, because like we went to the same high school. So I became friends with a girl that was in her grade, and she brought Jen to the show. So then I was like an adult, and I knew how to talk to girls. And so I actually ended up going out on a few dates with her, and like nothing ended up happening, but I told her that I was like, in high school, I was just obsessed with you to the point where like I would kind of, same as you, just try to be like in her orbit, just kind of like be, because I think I thought that was like, she'd start to think about me because I'd just be around,
That's, I mean, I have this weird memory of like, I think I was in 8th grade, and this girl had a big birthday party. They like rented a place out. We go to this birthday party, and there's this girl that I like have this huge crush on. And by the way, she's calling me on the phone every night. We're talking on the phone every night for hours. She's calling me and stuff.
Well, you have reason to believe.
And she's hanging out with me in public and shit. But like, I don't talk to her ever when I'm around anybody, because it's just like, oh, people are going to know I like her. And then, of course, she would lose interest. But then later on, I would show up and just like, if there's a party she was going to be at, I'd be like, I'll be there. Or if I was like, if she was getting a drink, like you said, I would sort of like be like right on the outside. You're right, like right in their orbit. I would just kind of, I was so bad at girls. I was so bad at having girlfriends.
You and me both. And it was so funny, because I think like, I think I was in grade 10 and she was in grade 11. So I'd have been 15 and she was 16 at the time. And like, I remember like
That's ambitious, John. I got to tell you.
I know. And it was, because nothing ever happened, obviously. But like, it's just like one of those things where, I think in your mind, you have two different thoughts. Like your first thought is the one that I said already, where like, oh, maybe if I'm like just in her orbit, or like I'm just kind of around, she'll think about me more. And then you also have the second thought of like, am I going overboard? Like, is she noticing that I like her, or that I'm kind of always around? Like, so you'd be kind of scared someday. You'd be like, okay, well, yesterday I did the like kind of fake getting a drink at the water fountain to wait for her to come out of her class. So like today I won't do that. Like, you'd meticulously plan it all in your head. And then I remember when we were adults, like I think probably when we went out, I don't even know how old I was again, like 25, 26 or no, because I started comedy when I was 25. So I must have been like 28, 29. And I remember telling her this and she was like, oh, I didn't notice any of that.
Yeah.
Like on either side. Like she's like, I had no idea that you had a crush on me, but I also never thought like you were stalking me or anything. She's like, I just thought you were nice. I never really thought about it. I'm like, oh, cool. Like that's almost worse. Like I'd almost rather you have an opinion, one like love me or hate me, but the idea of like, oh, I literally never thought about you. And I'm like, oh, I thought about you all the time. So that's great.
I also think that my thought was, if the more times I'm close or in that area, the more chances we're going to end up in a conversation where I could profess my feelings. Right. But like that would have never fucking happened because I would have never done that, So I don't know. I don't even know how we got on that, but we're
talking about how songs might sort of be about girls. I mean, this is how Brandon Boyd went about it. I mean, literally the first lyrics you hear on this album, on the song Redefine. So this is, again, their major label debut. They're like trying to create a sound, create an impression. This is the first lyrics here. Imagine your brain as a canister filled with ink. Yeah, now think of your body as the pen where the ink resides. Fuse the two. Kapow. What are you now? You're the human magic marker. Won't you please surprise my eyes?
That is the worst shit I've ever heard. And I'm going to tell you something right now. That human magic marker line, always hated it. Always was just like, human magic marker? I'm like a redneck. I am not like a spiritual guy. You know what I mean? And you hear this California shirtless guy like, yo, the human magic marker, won't you please surprise my eyes? And you're like, ooh. Like, I don't know what that even means.
It doesn't mean, that's the problem. It doesn't mean anything.
I don't want
nothing.
I don't want that surprise. Yeah.
I mean, I teach English. Kids write poems and submit them to me. Like if a grade 8, like a 13-year-old submitted that poem to me, I'd be like, human magic marker? Really? That's really like, were you just looking around your backpack? And then you're like, oh, I guess human magic marker. I don't know. Like it's just,
I mean, you got to be kind of a freak to say magic marker anyway. I think it's like such a weird fucking way to say marker,
Yeah, it is such a weird, but that's Incubus though, right? Like I do feel like for them, a lot of things feel like magic. Like I think magic is something that like Brandon Boyd thought about a lot.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I get that they were using a lot of mushrooms and acid and stuff, right?
Of course.
And you can really fall into that trap. I did, me and a bunch of my friends did mushrooms one night, and I don't remember how it led to it, but one of them left the house because it was warm out. They left and they walked to their house. So I went to go find them with somebody else. Me and somebody else are walking to go find them. We get there and I'm talking to them and they're like, I don't know. Things just got like really wild there for a few minutes. And then I came home and laid in bed and in the dark and I like was really thinking. And you know how guys get really into psychedelics and collect samurai swords? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I kind of see why they would do that now. And this guy is not a samurai, so he's like a lawyer. He's like really well put together and stuff. Like it was just this weird thing where it's like this guy was like thinking God, I wish I was a fucking 23-year-old loser.
Who had samurai swords.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
I wish my clothes had cat hair all over them, sort of thing.
God. Well, that's like,
go ahead. But those things will fuck your head up, dude. Like if you use them a lot, you really do start thinking you've unlocked the keys to the universe.
Oh, no question. Like, I think like the song Nebula, I've got the lyrics up for that. And like Nebula sounds like a guy who's just done mushrooms and has cornered you at a party and is like trying to tell you what it's like inside his brain. Like, as someone who's never done psychedelics and who has been on the end of those conversations, this is very much like this is the whole song. Disconnect and let me drift until my upside down is right side in, which that is already like people who are on mushrooms or acid or ecstasy. Well, not ecstasy necessarily, but they love to tell you like where their body's at in life. They'll be like, oh, I feel like I'm up on the roof right now, dude. Like, it's crazy. Society must let the artist go to wander off into the nebula. Upon return, I conjure what was seen. I let it pulse and boil within my limbs. I lay my pencil to the porous page and let my lunatic indulge itself. Wander off into your nebula, see your nectarine of multiplicity come like Orgasmatron on overdrive.
See, I fucking when you put it in the context of being on shrooms, I understand why he wrote that. Like, I get,
I've been there. I feel
yeah. I get what he's doing. It's just like
pardon me.
The part about letting the artist wander, you know, that's the part that really got me, because it's like, oh man, if I told anybody the ideas I came up with when I was tripping, it would they're worse than cocaine ideas. At least cocaine ideas have some kind of basis in reality.
Yeah,
when you're tripping,
like, let's buy a building, dude. We buy a building. Let's just buy it. We could just buy a building and rent it out. And then we're the landlord. Did you ever think about that? And then we could just rent the whole thing. But then on the bottom, that'll be just for us. Like, we'll have the whole bottom floor of the building. Yeah, like there is something, it's never going to happen in the same way that mushrooms, but it's not like, guys, listen, tonight I went to space and I'm just going to let my inner lunatic out. And I'm just going to explain what happened when I was in space tonight. And you're like, okay, I liked the building guy better. I like a real estate plan more than I like hey, I went to space. So
it's so weird because like, it doesn't get dark either, which I don't know if that means that this was written during one trip or written during a period of time where there were a lot of trips happening, because like I got to imagine the guys were like 19, maybe 20 when they wrote. I don't know their ages when they wrote this album, but when I was 19, I was using acid like every day for like 3 months. I did.
Brandon Boyd was 21 when S.C.I.E.N.C.E came out.
Yeah, so it's probably one of those situations where he was barely ever not tripping, you know? Like, there was this period of time, I lived in this small 2-bedroom, it was a garden apartment, and one of the rooms had a tarp in the middle where two dudes slept. One slept on one side of the tarp, the other one slept on the other side of the tarp. And then I had my own bedroom with my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. We weren't married, but we lived at this place where like we were broke as fuck. We couldn't afford the rent at all. I wasn't even making enough money that I could even make an attempt to pay the rent on this place. And, but we still wanted to do drugs, but weed felt like too expensive. And acid is only $5 and it lasts like 8 hours. So it was just like, let's just fucking do acid every day. And we did it every day. And I know the neighbors hated our guts. Like, and we would wave to people when they were driving to work in the morning. We would still be up in the morning on like a Wednesday, like waving to the people we kept up all night screaming at a fucking apartment complex. And like, I can just see where your brain it just gets fried, and you like don't know what's good and what's bad. I mean, that was like the summer I probably wrote the most of any earnest stuff that I ever wrote, like until I started doing comedy. Obviously I write a lot more now, but like before, that was my most creative time. And I would have to say it was like 100% trash. There is not like one good word in there at all.
Well, I think too, the problem probably is that like, so you're describing all of that. And then you're also saying like, yeah, and I was also dirt poor and I lived in a house with two other guys that slept on a tarp in the living room and whatever. Whereas Brandon Boyd had just signed a 7-record deal with Sony as a 20-year-old. So like, imagine you had all of those thoughts on acid and so did he, but he could legitimately be like, oh yeah, people really want to hear these thoughts. Like, yeah. I am a genius. Like I am like, pardon me, like you were probably sitting at home going, I'm a fucking genius.
Yeah.
Sitting at home going, I am a fucking genius. And you're like, okay, time to slow down. Like you could tell almost the exact line in Incubus's trajectory where they got too famous that they couldn't just be doing drugs all the time. And that's in between Make Yourself and Morning View. It's like right. Make Yourself is like weaning off of the acid, and then Morning View is like, nah, we just smoke weed and surf now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the fucking thing about me is I like Make Yourself. It was almost what I was going to choose. Yeah, I was almost going to choose that for this episode, but I have trouble defining it as it's hard. It's harder to define than science, I guess. Yeah, I assume we'll get to it.
More clearly nu metal than Make Yourself is.
Yeah, but I think I like Make Yourself a little bit more. There's some cringy lines in Make Yourself too, but I didn't get past Make Yourself with them. I felt like they, you know what? And I'm listening to Science today, and I'm like, you know, at the time, I remember thinking after Science that they let me down, that they weren't what they were advertised for. And I remember just thinking they're trying to be 311, you know, that like, and I don't like 311. So I'm not into this, but like, it's really almost not fair to say that, because Science, if you listen to it, it doesn't sound like any of the other albums we've done. And there is clearly, it's clearly not nu metal. You know, they toured with all those guys though. Yeah. But it's closer to Primus or like Red Hot Chili Peppers, I think, than heavy metal.
Like funk influences. I mean, I think where it gets the nu metal thing, I think, is probably that it's super bass forward. Like this album in particular, especially compared to other Incubus albums, it's very bass and rhythm section forward. And Brandon does a lot of kind of rapping. Like it's not really rapping, but it's like talk singing in a way that you could see them fit kind of with those nu metal bands. But I agree. So speaking of the album, let's do our background. So this album, as I said before, was the second album from Incubus. Their first was called Fungus Among Us, which is...
they were fucking obsessed with
you need to know about them.
Yeah, they were obsessed with fucking psychedelics, and we've all been there in our lives. Yeah. I mean, I have been there, and everybody I know. It's just like sometimes they are good, but like young people don't do them right. And it's hard to explain. it's hard to explain why, because you feel like an old man, but like you're not supposed to do them for multiple days and stuff like that. And it's not like a party thing. It's more like a meditative state, I guess, in a way. I mean, it's fun to do it with other people, but like, I don't know. When I do it now, it's therapeutic and I'm trying to grow from it. But when I was doing it back then, I was like, fucking shoot me into outer space, dude. You know?
I'm an artist. I want to come back and document this for the world.
Yeah, I'm fucking, it's crazy out there. You guys don't even know. You don't even fucking, and you can't explain it. Oh my God. I mean, drugs are all, there's no good drug conversation. I don't think. I can't think of one.
Yeah, not when you're high. No, not.
Yeah, when you're high, it's impossible to say anything interesting.
Well, Brandon sure tried. This album came out September 9th, 1997. It was released on Epic and Immortal Records, which was a Sony affiliate. As I said before, after Fungus Among Us, they signed a 7-record deal. Back when that was the thing that you could do. You could just have a good debut album and then a label. Their advance after they signed that deal for those 7 records was $8 million. So Incubus signed an $8 million deal, $8 million holding deal off of an album called Fungus Among Us. This was recorded in between May and June 1997 over 6 weeks in Santa Monica, released on September 9th. The album has only gone gold, so it never charted. So gold, obviously, in the States means it sold 500,000 copies. It's also gone gold in the UK. In the States, it didn't turn gold until 2002. So it took it 5 years to turn gold. So obviously not a massive record for the band. Before we get into talking more about the band specifically, Bryan, you've touched on it a little bit, but you haven't got super into detail. What was your kind of your history with Incubus? When did you first get into them, and how did it kind of foster your life?
I don't know. I used to go to a site called the PRP.com. I think we've talked about it before.
We definitely have, yep.
But it was like all the news about any new metal related stuff, and Incubus would if somebody came up there a lot, I would check them out. It was sort of like that was the tastemaker for me, and if it went over, that would be great. If it didn't, it didn't. And with Incubus, it was really weird because they aren't a band that I think that I would traditionally have liked back then.
Yeah, I was really curious about that with you, because when I saw this album came out in 97, I was like, oh, it's kind of weird that Bryan liked this.
Well, I don't. Oh, man, when did I get into that? I probably did get it. I was into this in high school because I used to write Incubus on the back of my notebooks. And I don't know. I don't usually like this funk inspired rock thing unless it's like metal, like it's got to be super heavy. But I think I just felt okay liking this because all my friends did, and like it felt I think what it felt like to me was like, oh, a little bit of variety in old Bryan's playlist,
variety that's like cool, I can get this is variety I'm allowed to like.
Yeah, a little, yeah, because it's like there are songs on there like Anti-Gravity Love Song or whatever the fuck the song, Summer Romance
bracket the Anti-Gravity Love Song.
Yeah, there's Bryan. Like songs like that on it where you're like, oh, this is interesting. This isn't like anything I listened to. But then like I also distinctly remember at the time thinking it was a joke, like a joke that they put that song on the album. And when I listen to it today, it's probably the best song on the album.
It's a great song. I love that song so much.
Yeah, I mean the lyrics aren't too embarrassing, and it's not. It's interesting. I also like well, we'll talk about what we like later, but I only got to see them live. I saw them live at Ozfest whenever they did that. 98, I think.
98, yep. So also what a weird Ozfest band.
Yeah. Well, but they were big with people like me. Like the Ozfest thing is so weird because like in those early days, they were kind of having everything there. Right. And then it turned into mostly just like Zakk Wylde type stuff, It's like based on when we like talked about that with Keith Buckley on the bonus episode, it almost seems like the fans of Ozfest just kind of forced them into that. Right. Like that the fans were just kind of like, okay, we don't want anything other than this kind of like specific type of metal. We don't want Every Time I Die. We don't want Incubus. We don't want System of a Down. We just want any band that Devin Townsend is in. We want the Zakk Wylde project. We want, like that kind of thing. Right. So I saw him there. I don't remember much, but then I saw him open for Deftones.
Oh man, that would be so sick.
And that was, well, did they? Oh, yes, they did. They opened for Deftones. This is an arena show. Yeah. And I was sick, but I couldn't miss it. And those were really the only 2 times I got to see them, unless they were at like a festival I went to. Like I'm pretty sure those are the only 2 times I saw them. I thought they were fine. I don't know what you do at an Incubus concert now, though.
Yeah. So this might be the rare band on the show that I've seen more than you. I think I've seen this 4 times, I think. My first show ever was Incubus.
Well, I was fully out after Make Yourself. I was like 100% out when they finished Make Yourself. And I don't think they came here much. The thing about California bands is a lot of times they spend a lot of their time right there in California. Incubus is a California ass band,
for sure. Big time. And they're they're a very live at Red Rocks type of band.
Yes. Yeah. I'm really surprised they don't get like adult contemporary respect. I guess they probably play Drive.
They do now, like some of their, some of the songs on like Light Grenades and shit, I feel like maybe must have. Like Dig is like a pretty adult contemporary type song.
Light Grenades.
Yeah, that was the album after A Crow Left of the Murder.
See,
I was in, so for me, so Morning View is my favorite Incubus album. It's one of my favorite albums ever. It's probably in my top 20. Like, I love Morning View. I just think it's fantastic.
Is there a hit single from that?
Yeah, they had 3. There was Wish You Were Here.
Good one.
Circles and Warning.
Oh, it didn't have Nice to Know You.
Oh, yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah, that was one too. Yeah. I think they had 4 actually. I know
that's a good one.
That was okay. I liked that record. That was right after Make Yourself. And then Crow Left of the Murder, I thought was fine. It has 4 or 5 good songs on it, but I didn't love it. And then they just totally lost me with Light Grenades. I was totally out after that. But
yeah, I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
Do you think that they're an embarrassing band to like a little bit?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
With more than Korn,
Yeah, more than Korn for sure. Because the thing with Incubus is that is Brandon Boyd, right? Like, I think especially if you're the type of guy that's like we talked about your history with nu metal on the show, and we've talked about mine too, where like it was totally a period where you liked your bands and you liked your sound, and anything else was lame. And when I say lame, we didn't call it that. We called it other things that were inappropriate, and we've learned a lot more about now. But and so when you have a band like Incubus, whose frontman is a legitimate model and is like dating models, and every picture of him, his shirt's not on, and then the lyrics are what they are. And I think too, especially after Morning View, because obviously Drive exploded them. So then I think people didn't realize that they had this kind of history as being a bit more of a metal band. Kind of in the same way of Sugar Ray, right? Like Sugar Ray got huge off of Fly, but if you listen to the record that Fly is on, it's like all nu metal songs, but then just Fly for some reason, right? So I think that's the thing is people would have seen Incubus as oh, you like them, and then you'd have to be like, no, but have you heard Certain Shade of Green and New Skin and these other kind of heavier songs? And they would just be like, no. And you're like, okay, well, they're not Drive. Their songs don't all sound like Drive. It's relax. But yeah, they're a lame band to like, but I've always liked them. And yeah, like I said, they were my first ever show. I think, this is a blast from the past, but I think I got into Incubus from Family Values 98. Because I had the Family Values Tour 98 VHS and CD, and I just used to listen to that all the time. And there's only one song by Incubus on it. New Skin was on it. But I just thought that was a great song. And then I heard Certain Shade of Green, and I loved that song. So I would make mixed CDs with Certain Shade of Green on it and stuff. And then, I hadn't really heard Morning View. I kind of knew the singles. I knew Wish You Were Here and Warning, I think. And my friend had gotten tickets to Incubus, and my parents wouldn't let me go to shows. So I've talked about that before on the show, but they wouldn't let me. So Incubus was I was going into grade 12. It was actually the first day of school in grade 12, and Incubus was playing, and 30 Seconds to Mars was opening. And yeah, it was an arena show. Like Incubus was pretty huge at that point. It was the Morning View tour, and I thought it was just a phenomenal show. And then I've seen them like 3 times since then, and they've been great every time. The last time I saw them was in September. They were touring Make Yourself, so I saw them play Make Yourself cover to cover, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I would go see that for
they're
sure.
Just like they're a good band. Like they're just talented musicians, and I've always liked them. There's no like, even though I don't love their new albums, like if someone put one of their new records on, I would never be like, oh, I hate this, turn it off. Like that would just never happen for me. Like I think they're a solid band, but this album in particular, I don't remember it being as good as it is. Like it's a really good record.
Well, I do remember. I think like you jogged something loose there, in that like I remember being skeptical of this thing until Certain Shade of Green came on and being like, holy shit, this fucking rules. I mean, this is a band that the turntablist is crucial and good, and I would not take him out of Incubus.
Wow.
You know?
Big statement.
Yeah, I want to get rid of most of them, but the Incubus guy, he really fucking does it right. Like he's seamlessly mixed in, and he's a part of the music.
Yeah,
and I think it's like really impressive how good that stuff was done, how well that stuff was done on the first album. You know, the first studio album, but like this thing sounds better than all of the ones that we've done. I mean, I guess, P.O.D. and Linkin Park didn't sound bad, but I'm just saying that
Linkin
this
Park
is like
record's pretty well produced.
Yeah, this is just well produced, but it is like, it's so hard. It's like, it's music for people who play hacky sack at concerts.
Yeah,
I think. And that's what bothers me.
Hacky sack. You want to keep playing hacky sack. You want to be on the lawn. You want to feel this.
That's what I think is like. That's what I think about when I see him, though. It's like hacky sacks and like wearing Guinness t-shirts for the beer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like, I just feel like that's it's a different type of person. This isn't like dirtbag music. This isn't like scummy music. These guys don't look like any of the bands that did the heavier stuff. And I think they're also like not concerned with being heavy at all. And it's and I don't think they ever were. And it's funny because this is a band that you could say, or that a lot of people probably, I know after Make Yourself, people are like, these guys have fucking sold out. And it's like they released album after album after album that sounded more like Make Yourself than Science. And you're like, no, they like didn't sell out. They that was like the direction they were going in, for
sure. But you can even hear it like on this record. I think you can hear kind of those touches, right? Like I think Anti-Gravity Love Song is a good kind of touchstone of like, okay, they were fine just making kind of like fun and funky songs. And even like the guitar parts in a lot of these songs, like there's such a really cool guitar part on Vitamin that's just kind of like in the background that you wouldn't even necessarily pick up unless you're wearing headphones, but it's kind of like a really skronky, just like kind of really fun. And you're like, oh, okay, these guys are like legitimate players. Like, we've kind of talked about Korn. We talked about this a lot, especially with Nick Weiger, where like, we're not even like, are we even sure that anyone in Korn is like a good musician, like classically like good musician? Whereas like Incubus, you can tell, I mean, their drummer's incredible. Like I've seen them live. Jose Pasillas, he's insane. And then obviously like Einziger is a crazy guitar player. And then my favorite thing about Incubus is that their current bass player, who's been with the band now for like 15 years, like quit the Roots to join Incubus, which is like,
so weird.
Which is so weird. It's very weird. And it's also like cool though. Like, cause I mean, people think of the Roots as being like a very technically proficient band, and obviously they are and were. And this guy saw Incubus as like enough of a creative stimuli to be like, okay, I'm going to go and join this band. Like that just goes to show, I think, like how talented they were. And so I think that's the thing too, when you're a band in this era, in this vein, you just kind of make whatever music makes you happy and satisfies you as someone who's good at music, as opposed to like, I think a band like Korn or a band like Limp Bizkit, where they're like, well, this is just the music we can play, that this is the music we can make. And so we're just going to make this music forever kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, with Brandon Boyd, I think there was very little chance of them not making it too. Like that guy is just handsome, you know, and it's beautiful man. Yeah. It's the shirtless thing that annoys the shit out. He's like Bert Kreischer. I get annoyed at Bert Kreischer too, by the way. And I fucking can't even think about taking my shirt off, and these guys are just walking around with it off all the time.
Bert Kreischer has one of those like he has one of those bodies where like he's fat, but like it's tight.
Yeah,
like it's like a tight fatness. So he takes his shirt off, and you're like, okay, this is a big guy, but like it doesn't look bad. He just looks like a big guy. Whereas like there are other people who probably weigh the same as Bert who look far worse with their shirt off. I feel all over the place, and you're like, okay, well, like I feel like I look worse than Bert with my shirt off, and I probably weigh 60 pounds less than he does. But like I just the way my body sits is like not good, you know. And so with Brandon, I mean, I saw them in September. He's 44 years old. He took his shirt off. It looked great. I was like, this guy. I mean, I'm all about it.
You kiss him.
You would, because he seems like he smells and tastes good.
He
like,
does seem like he smells good.
Yeah, he's like I don't want, like, you know, I'm pretty straight. Like I don't want to kiss a guy, but like when I think about it, that's like the type of guy where you'd be like, yeah, like he smells good. He takes care of himself. It's all good. You know?
Yeah. He's super fucking handsome. The issue I have is I get very uncomfortable when people take their shirt off, you know, because it's just you're
circling back. You're like, no, we got to keep talking about it.
I'm uncomfortable with them. I'm sorry. I just want people to know that like anybody, women, men, anybody, non-binary people, if you take your shirt off while I'm hanging out, I'm like, ugh, put it back. Okay. We're not getting, this isn't a fucking orgy. Okay. We're all wearing our clothes. That's all I was saying.
Yeah. Listen, I respect that for sure. I mean, it is definitely, I think for him, it fits the aesthetic, right? Like when he takes his shirt off, you're like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense to me. It makes sense that he doesn't have a shirt on.
Does he come out shirtless, or does he take it off in the middle of the show?
Comes out, or at least when I saw him, I think every time I've seen him, he's wearing a button-up collared shirt that has short sleeves.
Do you think he rips it off instead of
he'll unbutton it as the show goes on?
Smart. Yeah. This guy's a fucking performer, man.
Yeah, he knows. It's like how other artists do costume changes. He has like 4 stages. He has like 4 costumes. It's like his first costume is just like fully done. Like he might even be wearing something. Like I think when I saw them in September, he came out in a hoodie. So like first costume was like hoodie. He plays like one song with like the hood kind of over his eyes, sings it, whatever. Then it's okay, we're here. We're playing the show. He takes the hoodie off. So costume 2 is just the button-up shirt, but it's fully buttoned. And then costume 3 is the shirt is fully unbuttoned, but it's still on. He's caping. He's got the beautiful cape of the shirt. And then costume 4 is the shirt's fully off.
Yeah. That's fucking cool, though. You know, it's cooler than Jonathan Davis changing pants in the middle of a show where it's like, what's going on, dude?
Yeah, why did you need to do that? I don't.
Yeah,
that was odd. Changing the vibe for me. You know, there's not. You know, you're not like, oh shit, he just changed his fucking pants. They better be playing Freak on a Leash next because I'm losing my shit.
So I think like, do you think that every song on this album is like really? I think every song on this album is good. You know, like this might be my first. I'm going to name this a Bryan's Perfecto is what I would call it. It's a Perfecto.
Really?
I will call this. I think it's perfect.
Wow.
And it's not my favorite album. I want to fucking really stress this.
Right.
It's not the best album in the world to me, but I think it's all highs.
Right.
Which is, that's so incredibly hard to do. I've said this before. There's a song I don't like on the first Korn album. There's a song I don't like on White Pony. There's a song I don't like on Around the Fur. You know, there's 3 or 4 I don't like on Significant Other. And like, these are the main songs, but this one, there was not any time where I wanted to be like, skip. I don't even feel like there are any album cuts on this. Every one of them is a single in my heart.
That's wow. I mean, that's big. I would say, like, to me, the way I would approach it, 2 things. First of all, I think, you know, this is our 8th episode, our 8th record, and we've also done a couple records on our bonus episodes. And I think like this holds up in a really strange way that like nothing else we have or will listen to does, aside from Deftones, probably. You know, like even Korn, like, you know, like I love Korn and Limp Bizkit and whatever. Like, you know, obviously these are some of my favorite bands, but even the first Korn record, which I don't think has a bad song on it, I still am like, okay, but they're like, it's a very flawed record. Like it sounds like it's from 1994. Whereas like this Incubus record has this kind of weird, I mean, it's 22 years old. And also it's fucked to me how good this record is, considering they were all like 21 to 23 years old. Like the record shouldn't be this good. And it's weird in a way that it fits with their catalog too. Like a lot of bands, especially bands that do change their sound, and I think Incubus over time has definitely morphed their sound. It's crazy that their debut album still fits in with their catalog. Like I don't think if you're like a late adopter of Incubus and you like got into them like around Light Grenades and you only know like Light Grenades and whatever the other, there's like, I think one of the records is called 8 and I don't know. There's like 4 records after Light Grenades. Even if you only got into that, I think you could listen to S.C.I.E.N.C.E and you might not like it, but you could at least be like, oh, okay, I can see where this band came from. Like it totally makes sense to me that this is part of their canon. It doesn't feel separate from the rest. Like even the way like Adrenaline for Deftones sounds a lot different from the rest of their catalog.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's a weird thing where like this really fits in. I would just say for me, it's a record that if I put it on in the car, I probably wouldn't skip any of the tracks. But if Magic Medicine wasn't on it, and if Nebula and Calgon weren't on it, that'd be fine. like I
both
go
great
either way.
songs.
I mean,
that Nebula riff in the middle, that's the most metal part of the album. That's the part I like.
Oh yeah, I don't like that part. So yeah, for me it's like I wouldn't skip it. Like if I'm listening, you know, Summer Romance comes on and then Nebula, like I wouldn't skip it, but I also am not, it doesn't come on and I'm like, oh fuck yeah, like here we go, this is the song I was hoping for. Like, but overall, I mean, yeah, it's a crazy strong record. And like I said, it's one of those, I haven't listened to it cover to cover in a long time. Like I don't know when the last time I actually sat down and listened to this cover to cover was. So like listening to it today, I was like, holy shit, like this sounds good. Like this holds up in a crazy way. It's really, really solid.
I mean, Magic Medicine sounds good in the context of the album, though. You know, like I guess if you're judging it by would I want to hear this on a shuffle, then I would agree with you that, you know, Magic Medicine you probably don't want to hear. But
sure.
I do feel like when you listen to the whole thing in order, Magic Medicine is fine. It works perfectly. I didn't even like really super feel like I didn't feel like it stood out as annoying or anything. And
no, it doesn't. It doesn't stand out as annoying in a way that like Battlestar Scratchalactica does on Make Yourself.
Yeah.
Like to me, that track is like, okay, well, we got to give Kilmore something to do. So we'll just give him a track. Like, and I agree with you. He is a big part of the band, but it felt like he was in the studio being like, boys, you know, it'd be really cool as if like I could just kind of fuck around for a track. Like, I think that, you know, like even so I saw them play Make Yourself in September where they played it cover to cover and he played Battlestar Scratchalactica, but it was like completely different. Like even he was like, like it was just like, I'm going to fuck around on the turntables for like 5 minutes, but like, it's not going to be that, you know? So I think too, the problem for me is like, I love like Glass is one of my favorite songs on the record. I think it's so good. And to me, listening to it, especially today, I'm like, if you could imagine like Glass goes into Certain Shade of Green, I feel like I would just be like, like, I don't need that come down from Magic Medicine. I feel like you get Glass, you go right into Certain Shade of Green. I feel like that's where I'd be popping off. I'd be like, hell yeah. And then Favorite Things is kind of like a bit of a come down from Certain Shade of Green. And then obviously Summer Romance is a totally different vibe. And you can use that as the come down. Like, I don't think you need that Magic Medicine in the middle of those two tracks to balance it out in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I think I can. I'm gonna let you have this. I mean, obviously, you're the guy that hates System of a Down and now also hates Incubus. So negative. It's crazy.
Well, someone has to be, but I feel like I'm not really being that negative.
This one to me is like, I don't know. I just can't think of. I would remove Magic Medicine, I guess, if I had the chance. But I also think it fits pretty good in there. And I don't know. And I love Calgon. I think Calgon is great. There's some bad lyrics in it.
Very bad, yeah.
But if I had to judge... Like if I had to judge the rest of these songs' lyrics as harshly as I'm judging Calgon, then I would find something in every song. It's just in Calgon. Oh, yeah. Wait. I don't know if I'm thinking. Nope, it's Calgon. Is Calgon the one where they say they stuck cold things in my butt? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yes, that's that song.
I hate that lyric so much. Ugh.
I mean, it was in his butt, you know. He sampled a bit of his DNA. They left him on top of the sheets. I dreamt I went potty, then woke up drenched in me.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's like a really fucking bad. Yeah. It's really bad lyrics, but the song sounds good. I almost wish that Brandon Boyd just didn't write lyrics and just sort of made those sounds with his mouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he would just be like that, instead of they stuck cold things in my butt. And you'd be like, okay. Right, cool. Then you wouldn't have to hear the three butts, man. It's like just even so weird to hear a song that's on an album that's supposed to be metal, and he's like saying butt instead of ass.
They put cold things in my butt. Yeah. Hate it. I'm just trying to imagine like James Hetfield. Just being like, and then they put the cold things in my butt.
Yeah.
Like, you would just never recover from that.
I'm looking at the review scores for this album on.
It's pretty good.
Well, yeah, it did. All Music gave it 3 stars. The Encyclopedia of Popular Music gave it 3 stars.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've heard of before.
Yeah, I mean, I read it every month. It's like I check to see if they've added
it. I don't read it anymore. I read Wikipedia of popular music.
That's true. That's what I'm doing. Pitchfork gave it an 8.7 out of 10.
Yeah, and that's like for Pitchfork, that's absurd. But I mean, that was back before 8.0 became the best score you could get.
But the Rolling Stone album guy gave it 2. That's what I found interesting. I guess.
think that this would be an album Rolling Stone would like, especially coming out on Sony. You'd feel like a major label record they would be more into. But yeah, it's just the thing I always think about with the lyrics of this and like any band where I find the lyrics kind of laughable is like, how does the band feel about it? Like I'm just imagining like Einziger, he seems like such a perfectionist. Like when you see them live, he's got like 20 pedals. He's got like, I remember seeing them on the Morning View tour and they played Aqueous Transmission and he played a friggin' sitar. Like they brought out a giant sitar and he was playing that. And like all like, it's just, he's obviously an extremely talented musician. He seems like kind of a nerd, perfectionist type. Like he had to be just like, man, I wrote this really cool song. Like he had to come home to like his girlfriend or friend or whatever, be like, man, I wrote this amazing riff. And then Brandon was like, they put the cold things in my butt.
yeah.
And he's just like so mad. And his girlfriend's like, Mike, listen, you guys signed to Sony. Like, obviously there's something there that you're not seeing. Do you not understand? Okay. He called her a human magic marker in the song. What do you want from me? Okay. I'm trying my best.
I wonder though, I do wonder if they think it's good too, but I can't imagine somebody in the band wasn't. I mean, like, I think if you're playing guitar in a band and it gets signed and stuff, you're just like, okay. I mean, you do what you got to do, my man. You know, whatever you got to
only focus on that. Like, I guess, like, as I was saying that, I was thinking about when I played in a band, and I don't think I paid any attention to the lyrics at all. I was just like concerned about the drums, and I didn't really care what the lead singer was singing. I mean, he was a good lyricist, so maybe if he was bad, I would have had more thoughts about it. But I remember, like, he wouldn't come to practice with words, and I'd be like, oh fuck.
Yeah. I mean,
it was 1997 too, and it was maybe a different time. Like, and maybe they were all like, I'm guessing they were all doing mushrooms. I mean, the very funniest part of this too is like they're even listed on the record, pardon me, like under pen names. Like, I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but on the record, Brandon Boyd is credited as Cornelius. Mike Einziger is credited as Jawa. Their original bass player, not the one from the Roots, his name was George. He's credited as Dirk Lance. Yeah, DJ was DJ Life, so Kilmore wasn't in the band yet. And then Jose Pasillas is credited as Bad Mama Jamma with no spaces.
I thought they were going with like a theme there
no theme.
No,
he's just clearly like, hey, what do you want? Do you want to be like something on the record? And Einziger's like, I don't know. I like Star Wars. Call me Jawa. I don't know.
Yeah. Because, you know, Cornelius is the name of the Planet of the Apes guy. So I was like, maybe they're going with like alien-ish stuff. But I guess it's just, we're fucking twisted, dude. They also, they would put that picture of that guy, people would think that was the lead singer. That was Brandon too, is the guy that they put on all the covers of their albums, who I don't have any idea who that guy is. But
no clue. The album art is really bad.
Oh, really? Let's get into that.
I like the album art? I think it's really bad. I mean, okay, here's what I'll say. It absolutely fits with like one thing Incubus is very good at is like, if you look at all of their album art, it actually really makes sense as to like the lyrical content and like where they were at. Like, you've got S.C.I.E.N.C.E, it's got this weird dude on the front with like the periodic table and the moon in the background. Then Make Yourself is kind of like a heart wave, but like done in like kind of a cool way. Then Morning View is just a picture of the ocean. So you're like, oh, okay, cool. They're just like, you know, they're all about the ocean. Then A Crow Left of the Murder had them all done in cartoons, like really knotted. And I think that was like kind of their most complex record, you know. And then Light Grenades looks like clip art because it sucked, you know. It's like on through there. But I think like it makes sense, like it fits with the album. But I think like as just a album cover, it's pretty shit.
No, it's more inspired than. I mean, really, the only good album cover we've had is Korn, but this one is a lot more inspired than the rest of it.
Other is a good album cover too.
Oh, it's okay.
I mean, I think as far as fitting the aesthetic of the band and the sound, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I feel like this album does it really, like, I don't know, maybe it's a connection I've drawn in my brain because I haven't. Because I've heard the album so many times and seen the cover so many times, but I feel like this one really tells you what you're getting, and I feel like I don't know, it's one of the better looking nu metal album covers. I'm gonna say that, and it's quirky and it's weird, and that's the band. You know, the guy's face is a weird thing, especially when they don't like really explain it or who the guy is.
Yeah,
but
I think when I was younger, I thought that guy was the guy who was like doing the narration. I think that's what I thought.
I thought he wrote
like
the song
where he's like, where they're like reading the children's book or whatever. Like, I thought he's like, humans are human science is everything we can touch, smell, see, and hear. Like, I thought he was the guy doing that voice.
Oh, here it is. Here it is. Who's the guy? No, I looked up Incubus guy, and it was like it was all a Brandon Boyd.
Oh, right, because people just want to like jack off to him or whatever.
Yeah, and
the Incubus guy, just show me him shirtless.
Yeah, tell me who the fucking Incubus guy is. You know what I think I remember now. The Incubus guy is like, okay, so Chuck's life story has been discussed by the band. His name was Chuck.
Okay.
And Mulholland. Chuck was also on the cover of Enjoy Incubus. His life story has been discussed by the bands and fans alike, but no one can really figure out the truth of who he is or if that's even his name. Some say it's a photo of lead singer Brandon Boyd's dad, music photographer Chuck Boyd.
Here we go.
But it hasn't been proven. Brandon Boyd and Einziger in a very old interview said Chuck in real life was an advertisement model for cigarettes and also a gym teacher and also the voiceover for sex education videos. But they seem like they're bullshitting the entire interview. Some say Chuck is a morphed object created from all the faces of the members of Incubus. Some fans say they've seen Chuck at Incubus concerts in California. Whoever he is, he's become a famous face and an icon for Incubus fans. So no real answer. These guys
I really hated that. I really hated everything you said there.
Yeah, these guys are such fucking pricks. They seem like assholes when I think about it now.
Give off that vibe of like they seem like they wouldn't be fun to hang out with in like the opposite way that Korn wasn't. Like we talked about that with Nick Weiger when we looked at Who Then Now and how like Korn just seemed like they would be so obnoxious and awful to hang out with. These guys seem they would be awful to hang out with, but like in the opposite way, that they'd all just be like sitting there, like doing their own thing, not speaking to you or looking at you, and just kind of like generally treating you like shit.
Yeah, I read the 3 articles you sent me earlier today, and like one of them is just a transcribed interview, and like that thing, I felt bad for the person that was trying to give the interview, you know, as I'm reading through, I'm like, these guys aren't fucking taking this seriously. Let's not all waste everybody's time. I mean, I do like the idea of having some kind of mystery behind your thing, like some kind of mysterious thing, but it's no fun if there isn't like an actual real story of who it is for people to later find out, I guess.
Well, especially like when it's this type of band, like when you're going to be like a major label visible band, like it's one thing to create mystery if you're kind of like an indie band and you're hoping to like play dingy clubs and kind of carry this air of mystique about you. When you're trying to be like a major label band from California whose lead singer wears his shirt like 10% of the time, you probably can't be doing interviews where you're like, I don't know. What do you think? Like, you know, it doesn't really fit within. And I think that's where my problem with the album art comes in too. It's like, it just doesn't feel like major label album art. Like if you're like a funk metal band that's kind of like just, you know, hoping to play, like your dream is like, maybe we could tour America in a van and play 150 cap venues, then sure, that's a funny album cover. But like, you're a major label band that's trying to play arenas, and like your album cover is kind of like 4 different clip art things put together. Like, it's just very weird to me.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess I will look. I still disagree. I think it's a good album cover. I gotta tell you,
people might tell me I'm wrong, and I'm okay with that. But we can get into the interviews. So the one you're talking about was a transcribed interview from Ozfest 1998, backstage in Somerset, Wisconsin. And so the interview starts off, and I just hated the way the interview started. Like, so the girl giving the interview, her name's Jen. She says, tell me about the difference between playing in the daytime versus the nighttime. Because obviously Incubus, not that big of a band, probably playing in the daytime at Ozfest at this time. And Brandon's answer is, I can't be as scary as I normally am. And he's like, just like a hot guy who's never been scary in his life. And then Mike is like, none of us can be scary. You see, during the daytime, we all look like a bunch of sissies. At night, we turn into big, angry, ugly monsters.
Oh my God.
And you're like, oh, Lord above. Like, yeah, like what is
Lord above
saying there? It's so confusing.
Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, like as you know that's one of those things, like as soon as the interview starts, the interviewers are just like, oh, okay. All right. So this is how it's gonna be. Okay.
All right,
I think sometimes you read these things and like I see it in, I'm a big sports guy and you see it in sports too. It's like I think they're trying to be funny, but they're just really bad at it. And so it just comes across as like douchey and like kind of mean to the person interviewing you because you're just really not giving them anything to work with off of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then she in this article, she asked what science stands for.
Oh yeah. Do you want to read those out?
Yeah, I do because I hate them so much.
So bad.
So Brandon said, selling catamarans is every nautical captain's ecstasy. And the interviewer goes, really? And then he's like,
I wish I was a fly on the wall to hear the tone of voice that she said. Sailing catamarans is every nautical captain's ecstasy. Really?
Yeah. I mean, to me also, and then so the next one is social chronology includes everyone: Neanderthals, cannibals, humans.
The famous 3 types. First of all, social chronology is the wrong term for what he's trying to describe here. I mean, I guess what he's saying is we went Neanderthals, cannibals, humans, but like, I don't really think that that's how anyone thinks we evolved. And then also it ends in H.
That's
so,
what I was going to say.
So it goes. So it is in this one, it's called S.C.I.E.N.C.E.
Yeah. So then Mike goes, Southern California's Incubus enters Nevada carrying equipment. And by this point in the interview, I'm so fucking mad because it's like, so this is just another thing you did that, that didn't mean anything. It was just an aesthetic choice. The guy's face is an aesthetic choice. The name of the fucking album is just an aesthetic choice. There's nothing that can be read into. There's nothing that anybody can say.
Yeah,
that is wrong or right. And like, they don't explain it. They don't explain any of this shit. And it's like, it's less fun. Again, it's less fun if people can't find out the real answer, I guess.
Well, I think too, like Brandon, again, like the way that he responds kind of suggests like what I was talking about earlier. So Mike says, yeah, Southern California's Incubus enters Nevada carrying equipment. And then Brandon goes, sometimes we just sit around and come up with these for laughs. And it's like, okay, so you guys definitely do think you're funny. And like, maybe that would be funny. Like if you're in a band and you're in a van all day and Brandon's like, hey, I think we should call the album Science, but it should be like all capitals with like periods. So it seems like it stands for something, but it doesn't, and then they're like, but what if it did stand for something? And then Brandon's like, I don't know, sailing, what's a C word for a boat? And then Kilmore's like, catamarans. My dad had a catamaran. Yeah, sailing, catamaran. Like, I could get how that might be funny, like in the van or whatever, but then he follows it up, but he's like, in other words, there's not just one meaning, it's food for thought. And it's like, is it food for thought? Are people really sitting at home being like, God, what does science stand for? And how much will it impact my enjoyment of this album? Like, no one is thinking about this. No one cares. It's like, oh God.
Yeah, this one it is also fuck, I lost my train of thought there.
That's okay.
But it's not good. It's not
good. And then
it seemed like pricks though. And I know what I was gonna say. So when we were in the Hellfire tour, we had bits we were doing in the car that were just like tossing song lyrics out that we were making up, and it was like, we're not going to do this on stage ever. I'm not going to take this out in front of people. This is just something that we did together because there were 10 of us in a fucking car for 13 days,
Yeah. Oh, totally. And that's just it, right? It's like you have to kind of, you have to really sort of, juggle it. Like you have to know where that line is, and I think like it's really funny. I pulled up another article. This was from the 20-year anniversary of S.C.I.E.N.C.E. They were interviewed by The Guardian in the UK. And it says, the beginning of this paragraph says, "Nu metal turns 20 this year, but the band are keen to distance themselves from any lingering associations. When I hear that term, it makes my palms sweat a bit," says Boyd. "We were being embraced by some of the nu metal champions of the time and opening for them, and it always made me cringe." And this is, I just want to note, in the same article where they talk about how they are now working with Skrillex. So it just is very funny to me that they're like, oh, nu metal, we hated being called nu metal, but also we're doing an album with the dubstep loser.
With the dubstep guy that Korn did an album with.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's the thing I thought is like, so you guys, you came out, you went on tour with nu metal bands to get out there. Most of your early fans are nu metal people, and then you like sort of throw the fucking genre under the bus and then come back later and then are following Korn again. You're just following Korn over and over again.
All any of us are doing, really. That's what the whole music industry has been doing since 94. But
I agree.
Well, it is interesting too, because like exactly what you said, like those are like, I mean, that's how I got into them. I mean, like I said, I found them from Family Values. And I think the point you made is really good, because he then follows it up by saying that he didn't like being compared to nu metal because nu metal was openly misogynistic. And that he said that he feels like Incubus were sensitive and female friendly. But so much of nu metal was openly misogynistic, Boyd says, and that always felt really weird to me. And I agree, like listening back to some of this nu metal, you listen to Limp Bizkit especially, for sure, you definitely get that. But like at the same time, I agree with you. It's like you kind of made your money and your fame off of the backs of these bands. Like, I mean, you had one album out and you got on an arena tour with two of the biggest nu metal bands on earth and fucking Ice Cube, like rap legend Ice Cube. And you're going to sit there and go, oh, we always kind of hated playing those shows. It's like, yeah, fuck off, man. Like, how do you think like half of us came to this parade and now you're going to be like, he's kind of painting everyone who listens to nu metal as like a woman hater.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that article was one of the most annoying things, because I think like if I had to answer that question, even if I had the feelings he had, I would think that I'd be smart enough to say like, hey, we appreciate like, because it feels like they're taking shots at bands that help them along the way when they say stuff like that. I'm sure they toured with Limp Bizkit. I don't know, but I'm sure they went on the road with them. They went on the road. They went on the road with all these bands, and like they should like acknowledge that. They shouldn't be saying like, oh, we're just so embarrassed by this thing. It's such bullshit. It was all misogynistic. I mean, I guess like if you're thinking about it later on in life, that's kind of okay. I guess they're 20 years away from the album coming out, but you're right. They also did the album with Skrillex, and it just feels like they want to have it both ways. They want to be kind of considered 311, but they also want to kind of still be considered in the same place as Korn and Deftones, and probably not Limp Bizkit, but yeah, but they want to be in that. They want to be in that category, Even in the later part of the article, like he says, they say really weird things. Like they get asked, like, "Oh, they're talking about working with Skrillex," and someone says, "Was this exploration into EDM a step that Incubus ever imagined they'd take?" And Jose Pasillas, the drummer, says, "Even 6 weeks ago, I'd have said no." And you're like, what? You're like, okay, so 6 weeks ago, you're like, fuck EDM. And then your label's like, hey, we'll give you X amount of dollars if you work with Skrillex. And they're like, you know what? Maybe he has some good ideas. And then Boyd goes, I was a little afraid, not that Skrillex was going to ruin it, but that he would turn it into something that I wouldn't be in love with, says Boyd. The singer did, after all, write an article that compared certain types of dance music to diarrhea.
but he extended the eyelashes. They were already beautiful eyes, and he just highlighted them.
Oh my God. These fucking kiss asses, fucking sellouts. They seem like such pricks. Is that the article that took place in England?
Yes, that's the UK. It's still from the Guardian. Yeah. So it was just like, again, it just doesn't make any sense. You're calling the music, you're calling EDM diarrhea. And then you're saying like, oh yeah, we fully wanted to work with this producer knowing that he might, quote, ruin our music.
He might turn our music into diarrhea.
Yeah. But then the music was beautiful and he made it more beautiful. It's like, holy fuck. Like, how do you not, after 20 years, like recognize how you sound, like how your quotes are going to be taken and used? Like, and then he says another, like, just terrible, like someone goes, or the interviewer asks, what do you think your legacy will be? And Brandon Boyd said, it's like trying to describe the backs of your eyeballs. It's right there, but I can't see it.
Oh my God. I hate these guys.
I love the look that producer Dan has had on his face for the last like 5 minutes. He's like so upset with all these things we're reading.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the albums. This album is good, and I'm not gonna let them take it away from me. But maybe my rating is gonna go down slightly because they seem terrible to me. Like they seem like flaky. They seem like there's like these hippies that are also kind of mean, but like they don't say it. They don't talk about. They don't like yell at you. They don't tell you to fuck off. They're just kind of mean types of hippies. That's what they seem like. They seem like the kind of busting your balls, fucking mean hippies that are into crystals and shit,
He literally says that in the article.
Oh, I know. When I saw that, I was like, get the fuck out of here, dude. Crystals.
Yeah,
he voted for Marianne Williamson.
It almost like, and I know that Brandon Boyd's vegetarian because it came up in one of those interviews, but like it does seem like it's almost that kind of like that sort of that vibe that like some vegans have. Obviously not all vegans, and I'm not trying to do a like stand-up comedy vegan thing here, but like there are, I mean, I've been around, I live in Vancouver. It's a very big vegetarian vegan culture here. And it is that same kind of attitude that some vegetarians and vegans have of the like, they're not going to outright say like you're a piece of shit for eating meat, but like they will make you feel like that. And it feels like Incubus is like kind of the same way. It's like we're never going to be like, hey, you're a piece of shit, but like we're going to act and say things that are going to make you feel like we think you're a piece of shit. And we do think you're a piece of shit, but we're not going to come right out and say it.
Yeah, I mean, I also just never got the kind of tension some of these people have with interviewers. I guess maybe because I don't have like 45 people asking to interview me all the time, but like I feel like it's kind of like an honor and it's really neat, and who would ever want to interview me, and like these guys don't seem that way at all. They seem like let's really bust this interviewer's balls, let's like really be a pain in the ass at the interview. Let's tell her that science stands for some bullshit, I hate them. I strongly dislike them.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you.
My house, if they came to my house, I'd be like, you know what, Incubus, go to the next door neighbor's house. We're not buying what you're selling, buddy.
No, I feel that. I feel that way too. It is a weird, it's a weird vibe that they have cultivated, and it almost seems like like you were saying, that they almost titled the record "Science" specifically to fuck with interviewers. Like that's almost how it comes across. Of like, well, if we put periods in between all the letters and it doesn't really stand for anything, every interviewer is going to ask us what it stands for, and we can just say some bullshit and like fuck around.
Yeah.
And like, that'll be so funny, man. Like, that'll be so funny. Like, I bet that's how they talked about it amongst themselves. Like, oh, that'll be so funny, man. Like, everybody's just going to ask us like what science stands for, and it doesn't stand for anything. And we're just really high on mushrooms, but like everyone's going to ask us, and we can just kind of like make shit up. Like, we can just say it means like sailing catamarans is every nautical captain's ecstasy, or like whatever, man. Like it'll just be so funny, and like we'll just fuck with them.
Yeah. Well, we'll put this guy in the fucking album cover, and everybody will ask us about him, and we'll be like, "Oh, he's a sex education teacher."
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? No, it's fucking not. Be a band. Make music, okay?
Be men. Be real people. Be just regular guys. Just for one second.
Can you be a regular guy?
Yeah.
Can you come over here? I think Incubus should have to work at McDonald's for 1 full year.
Yeah, they got big too early. They were all 21 when science hit it, and they just have known no other life, and they need to they severely need it.
They need to work at a Midwestern Walmart for 1 entire year to be allowed to tour or make any more music, because I think they're just so, oh God. You know who he reminds me of? After reading, you send me these articles, I read them, and then he reminds me of Bono. Like the same shit I don't like about Bono.
Yeah.
Is like how Brandon Boyd came off to me. But Incubus is not as big as U2. They're not the same size of band. They don't have the fan. They have a large fan base. I'm not saying they don't have a pretty big fan base, but they do not have the amount of fans that you have to be able to pull off being this annoying.
For sure. Well, and that's the thing, right? It's like, I think when you hear people like Bono or like other people like that, you're like, oh, well, you're so famous that you deal with the world in a way that like I can't even comprehend. So like it's pretty easy for me to give a guy like Bono or someone else like that a pass, to just be like, well, like you're like, we're living on the same planet, but you're in a different, your life is something I can't even comprehend. So of course you talk like this, and of course you act like this. Like Brandon Boyd can walk down the street, and is one person going to recognize him? Maybe. Like if he goes out for dinner and he's out at a restaurant for 2 hours and he walks a mile each way to the restaurant, like how many people are going to stop him? One, if that. 0 to 1.
He and that's a really good point, because he's a guy that I wouldn't recognize him if I saw him on the street.
Yeah.
Walk. He would,
especially in California. He looks like every guy from California, I feel.
Right. And I think these guys, there is a thing that you can do to yourself if you're a touring act, where like if you hang around, like, I go stand outside of the venue and smoke until the show, and I'll like talk to listeners and stuff like that. I might go eat somewhere like a couple buildings down or something, where you can really convince yourself like, God damn, a lot of people listen to this thing.
Yeah.
Like, just because every person that likes your show in a city is there.
Well, I think it's like, I always find like stand-up comedy is very humbling in that way. Like when you do it at the level I do it, where it's like, I'm not even remotely famous, but like, I've had a decent amount of success, but you'll headline a show, you'll have a great show, you'll do really well, the audience loved it, they were laughing, and then you'll like stand in the lobby to sell your own merch or whatever, and like 90% of the people like desperately try to avoid even looking at you. Like it's like you're homeless. It's like, you just paid to watch me entertain you for an hour, and now you're like, oh, but I don't want to meet you. I don't even want to look at you. Like, don't, and it's very humbling. And that then you go like, oh, okay, you're nobody. You're a nothing.
I'm your waiter.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a totally different thing than like, like I opened for Nate Bargatze a couple times last year when he was here, and he had to cancel originally. So he was supposed to be here as part of the festival, and he got sick. So he came back like 2 months later, and then he said to the audience, he's like, I feel really bad that I had to cancel the show that I was sick. So I'll do a meet and greet after the show. He's like, I don't normally do meet and greets after my shows, but like, I feel really bad that I had to cancel before. So if you want to come take a picture, like whatever, no problem. And it was like, everybody who was at the show wanted to meet him and like take a picture with him. And so like, and you're like, oh, okay, this is what it's like to have this.
It is weird. it is like a really strange thing though, because I saw Bill Burr at the Funny Bone in Columbus like 10-12 years ago or something, and he walked out and stood outside. He did basically what I do. I walk and stand outside in front of the place, and if there's anybody who wants to talk to me, or if they want to get a picture, if they want to tell me some story, then that's when they get the opportunity to do it. And I usually like try to meet everybody that wanted to talk to me by the end. And I think he was doing that same exact thing after this show. And I walked out and I probably got like 2 feet away from him and fucking got nervous and just left. Didn't talk to him at all, and I didn't want to, like, I think I was gonna ask for an autograph or something. It was very weird. It was something I wouldn't do now, but I was just terrified to talk to him. And I think I think about that a lot now, because it's like, you know what, he wanted to talk to people, you know, like,
yeah, if he didn't want to talk to people, he would have stayed in the club until everybody left, and then he would have left. Like, I've been in lots of comedy clubs. There's always a side door that you can get out of if you don't want to speak to people.
yeah. It's incredible, man. I get so nervous around. I used to get so nervous. I'm a little better now. Didn't have a panic attack before I met Patton Oswalt, so I felt like that was pretty good. And like, but there was a time where I was just afraid, and I am sure that's what's happening when you perform and you go out and they don't want to talk to you. There's probably 50% of the people are just like, I don't want to bother him, because I don't know why they would think that you would go stand where all the fans are going to be walking. If it was, like, how much of a prick would you have to be?
I'm going to go stand out there, but don't fucking talk to me. If you talk to me, I'm going to lose my shit, but I am going to be right where you're walking out.
I'm not talking to people tonight. Thank you. If you want to look at me, please only 3 seconds at a time, and then walk away. Thank you.
Oh man, it's so true. Okay, let's get
green room. Everybody I've ever toured with, they spend a lot of time in the fucking green room. Brett spends a lot of time in the green room. I just can't be. I'm like a caged animal, and I can't be inside. That's why I stand outside.
And there's no problem with that. That's nice. I'm sure people love the chance to talk to you. And I think, you know, like, you've talked about it before. So I think people know that, like, okay, Bryan's going to be standing out front and he wants to have a chat, and that's great. You know, like, I think that makes a big difference. Okay, let's get to our tweet defense. We've talked enough about the album. So this is if this is your first time listening to the show, this is our album review score. So what it is it's basically, if someone were to tweet at you, you know, hey, I heard your opinion about Incubus science and I think it's wrong and you suck, and that opinion sucks, how many tweets would you engage with them in to defend the album? Bryan, what is your score for this, what you called a Bryan's Perfecto?
The Bryan's Perfecto, but the problem is the guys that made it are fucking jack-offs. So I'm going to give it a 10. Okay.
Hey, that's pretty big.
Fucking thing at 10, because I know I gave Korn like 15 or something like that. Yeah. And I'm gonna give this a 10, but 3 of those 10s are me talking about how they're assholes, you know. So I'm gonna call it a gentleman's 10, but it's a 7.
Gentleman's 10. Yeah. It's like, because someone will be like, yeah, you'll be arguing about it for like 4 tweets, and then the person will be like, yeah, but did you read this interview with Brandon Boyd? And then you'd be like, listen, okay, I know, like, he takes his shirt off a lot, he's got a lot of bad opinions. I like that. A gentleman's 10. That sounds like a strip club.
Oh yeah, it does. It's a 7.
Where are you guys going tonight? We'll probably drop by. We're going to go to the bar, and then we're going to go to the gentleman's 10.
Yeah, it's a 7. But the people are so repellent that you have to give it. I mean, the album's so good, you want to give it a 10, but the people are so repellent, you want to give them a 7. I err on the side of 10. 10 for Incubus
You're a
Science.
gentleman. Nice. I will go. I'm not a gentleman. I'm unlike you. I'm just going to give it a 7. I think that's a fair number of tweets because I think there are like enough really good songs on here that I would start like citing the songs. I think being like, oh, but you have to really respect like this song is really good and this song is really cool. And then I also would probably have like 1 or 2 tweets where I say that I hate them. Plus, I always like to tell the story of them being the first band I ever saw, so that would probably be in there too. Like, so yeah, I would say for me, it's just a working man's 7.
But that's a high fucking score for you because you've gave every album a 1. Basically.
Oh, that's okay. That's not you. That's not true. Okay, I think I gave Deftones like at least 10. Korn was at least 10. Limp Bizkit was at least 10. I think.
Slow It Down was at least 3.
Yeah, exactly. So 7 is like I do like this album. Again, it's like we've said, and I think you said it best. Like it's a weird album in that it's really good, and I feel like it doesn't have a lot of flaws. But it's not one that ever comes to my mind when I'm thinking about like best albums or my favorite albums. And it's not even my favorite album by Incubus. So it just exists in this weird space where I'm like, oh, this is a great album, especially for like a major label debut. It's really well realized. It's well produced. It holds up really well. But at the same time, it's never something that I'm like, oh, fuck, I really want to listen to Science today.
If someone asks you your top 5 new metal albums, this probably wouldn't make it. You don't think?
No.
Not even after today. I mean, because that's what I'm thinking about. I'm just like, I probably wouldn't either. I think it might be a 6, 7. It's in the top 10. Okay. I will say that. It might not be in the top 5, but it's a 6 or a 7 or something like that. And like, it moved. I think the listen through for this podcast moved it up significantly.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like it definitely holds up in a way that I wasn't expecting. Like when you suggested it last week, I was like, oh, cool. I like that album. And I knew I wasn't going to have like pain listening to it like I did with P.O.D. But like it held up in a way. It was almost like the opposite of System of a Down. Like I think when System of a Down got chosen, I was like, oh, that's an album I loved. I'm like excited to revisit it. And then I listened to it and I was like, oh, this kind of doesn't hold up in a way that I was expecting. And Incubus was kind of the opposite, where like I had the same feeling going in, like, oh, this is an album I really used to like. I don't listen to it a ton anymore. I bet it probably doesn't hold up that well. And then I listened to it and I was like, holy shit, it actually holds up really well. So yeah, it was fun. It was kind of interesting to see that.